YouTube, welcome to Jackie's Lyric Corner. I am Jackie, and it's time for a 7 on Sunday. So my parents did take the dog for a little errand on the day I'm filming this. So I'm filming when I can. It's hard to, when I have, stuff like this going on where I have to do something, when they're not available to do it. It's like, okay, I gotta figure out when will I have to balance, okay, what do I prioritize? Do I prioritize, reading, or do I prioritize watching videos, or do I prioritize filming? And I'm sure a lot of you guys would probably say prioritize reading or filming. But, I still enjoy watching YouTube videos, booktube specifically. So it's still a bit of a balancing act for me when it comes to, situations where my time is limited, so. Which is why I don't like filming before on a day I work. I don't like filming before I go to work. Maybe after, but. Anyway, so this Sunday's this is an October topic for the, I can't remember what date it was. I think it's the 29th topic. I don't know when this will go up when it goes up, but this is spooky and creepy recommendations, or spooky or creepy reads. Although I know the topics, although I guess the other ones were more paranormal, the other topics, but anyway. And there are some paranormal books in here, so, let's talk about spooky and creepy reads. Okay, so first we have Shirley Jackson's The Haunting of Hill House. So this is a haunted house story where this professor, the scientist, is doing an experiment. He claims it's a sleep experiment, but he's really trying to determine if this house is actually haunted. So he invites this group of 3 or 4 people. And one of them, the main character, she is someone who is very insecure, very kind of keeps to herself, very shy, lives with her sister and brother-in-law, and she does a lot of stuff for them, and they kind of take her for granted, and she's not very assertive, and she figures this is a great opportunity to do this, and which, it's been a while, it's been 2 years now since I read it, and I wanted to read it this year. I don't know if I will or not, but, she ends up connecting with the house. Like, she starts communicating with the supposed ghost in the house. And it's like, is the house really haunted? Is she crazy? Like, is this house affecting her mind? And is she really seeing this ghost? It's so it's creepy on the level that you don't know if it's real or not. It's also creepy in that, Jackson creates this really atmospheric, unsettling house where, things change, and, the staircase, when there's doors where there shouldn't be doors. It's kind of like the Winchester Mystery House, if you're familiar with that. And the house just has a life of its own, which, Stephen King, his Rose Red screenplay, it's a mini-series that was not a book, although he did have someone to write the diary of Ellen Rimbauer, who's the main ghost in that story. For that story, he was inspired by Shirley Jackson's novel. So basically, it's just so, like I said, so weird, but so cool. And I know some of these I've already talked about in the other video. Okay, so next is one that's not actually, is a different kind of scary. There's no ghost or anything. There's no actual ghost involved, per se. Although, but in a way, the people and the place is still haunted by a person. So, this is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. This is the first book I read by her. Then I read My Cousin Rachel, which also is creepy, but I don't have a copy of that one anymore because at the time I was not interested, but now I almost want to buy another copy of it. And give it another chance, read it again because it was still good. It's just I was kind of like all about Rebecca and like in the story, like the characters. And so Rebecca is about this woman in her 20s. She's like the main character in The Haunting of Hill House. She's very quiet, very shy, kind of submissive character, and she becomes a companion to this older lady who's a bit of a socialite and kind of judgmental and also very much, you know, gossip queen. And they're visiting. They go to, I think it's Monte Carlo, and they see this one rich guy there, Maxim de Winter, who everybody knows about, including the older woman, the old lady. And there's all these rumors swirling around about him, and his wife died. His wife Rebecca, the title character, had died mysteriously in a boating accident. And so there's all this speculation about him. Did he kill her? Was it suicide? Is she really dead? That kind of stuff. And when the old lady gets really sick, Maxim de Winter starts spending time with our main character, and they have this beautiful whirlwind romance where they fall in love. And when the old lady gets better and she's like, I'm ready to go, our main character goes to Maxim and is like, oh my god, now I have to leave. And I don't want to. And Maxim asks her to marry him. And they run off together to his English estate and get married. Although they have a beautiful honeymoon and everything. And it turns out when she meets the staff at his rather large estate, they're not too keen on her, and they keep comparing her to Rebecca, and especially the housekeeper, Miss Danvers, who seems to have been in love with Rebecca and is obsessed with her, and slowly over time, our narrator starts to become obsessed with her and wanting to be Rebecca, because she feels she's given the impression that Maxim is still in love with his wife. So as you can see, this is a little more, it's creepy in a different way, more in a psychological than a ghost kind of way, because, all these people are obsessed with Rebecca, and the memory of her haunts this house. And, we don't know, and with Miss Danvers, who, was constantly up in our narrator's space and telling her, oh, you'll never be Rebecca, and wanting to get rid of her potentially, because she's not Rebecca. So it's creepy and just unsettling what is going on. Is it, is our main character in danger? Or did Maxim, maybe he's a threat to her, and of course, he's not even helping because he's just very emotionally distant with her. So it's, like I said, it's creepy in a more psychological way and more of a, just paranoia type kind of way, fearful and without the monsters or the ghost. But I definitely recommend it. It's beautifully written, and Daphne du Maurier knows how to create a great atmosphere and really get inside people's heads. And one of the things that a lot of people point out about the story is that the main character does not have a name, so it makes it all the more she is unimportant until Rebecca, and that she could become, and that she almost implying that she wants to become Rebecca. But yeah, and it has had multiple adaptations. A lot. I haven't seen any other adaptations, but the most recent one, it was not the best one. I haven't seen the other ones though, so I have nothing to really compare it to. But I would like to see the one by that famous, what is his name? I can't remember that famous director. Hitchcock. I love to see that version because he not only did he do The Birds, but he also did Rebecca as well. So I'd love to see his version because I think he would really get the horror of it, the creepiness factor of it. That's, you know, but that is Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier. Next is one I definitely already mentioned, but I really want people to read it. Like I said, if you're not, there are aspects of it that might be questionable if people will love it or not, but that is The Historian. Like I said, it feels more dark academia than horror, but it's creepy in the sense that, especially when they go to Eastern Europe. But we have a main character who's found, after discovering this book in her father's library, she finds out that there's a possibility that Dracula might be alive and might be real and alive still. So the fact that he might still exist, that I think is the creepiness of it. And the fact that they might, she's trying to find her father who has disappeared, that they are being stalked. And you don't know what's going to happen, if the vampires are going to show up and attack them, or, and is it possible that it's all real? And just the eeriness of people's, when they get to Eastern Europe and feeling like they're being watched and followed and not knowing, and, if they are, and just the places that they go, these underground places, like tombs and stuff like that, where, I think tombs in general are just creepy. Because, first of all, the fact that you could get buried alive, and it feels claustrophobic, and there's always that fear of being buried alive in a tomb, entombed in there, and not being able to breathe, and then being surrounded by a bunch of dead bodies. To me, that's just plain creepy. And unsettling. I'm just so terrified that, oh my god, what if it caves in or something? Or what if there are such things as zombies or vampires or whatever? So I feel like it's a mixture of creepy and a history lesson, because there's a lot of deep dive into history, and I would have to read it again, but I do wonder some of the history aspects, because I was just reading for reviews about A Discovery of Witches, because I personally love that book, and I was wondering if people, because I know people compare it to Twilight, and so I was looking for those kind of criticisms, seeing if people think the vampire in that story is like Edward Cullen. But there were some of the other criticism A Discovery of Witches gets are that it's too bogged down with history and details about all the characters and all the history and stuff. So I'm wondering if that would hinder people's enjoyment of this. Although I love her writing. So this is very historical, but with a creepiness to it. And that is The Historian by Elizabeth Kostovo. So that's my first three spooky, creepy reads. Although this is where I'm confused when I was thinking about doing this, pre-filming this, does she mean ones that you want to read? But then she didn't say TBR on there. So I assume they're ones that you've read that you would recommend. Okay, next. Okay, so I try not to do this, but a lot of my horror is by this author that at least I have physical copies of. And I kind of want to stick, and as I've said in the past, I try to stick to when I do these, 7 on Sundays or tags where you have a book answer. I always try to stick to ones that I can actually show you a copy. So, fortunately, I do have two by this author. That is Stephen King. And the first one I'm going to talk about by Stephen King that is a creepy read is It. So, if you're familiar with It, it's a story with a clown. So you have our main characters, this group of 7 kids, and half the book is set in the 50s when they're like 12, 13, and the other, I should say, like 11 to 13. And then the second half is in the 80s when they're adults. and they live in the town of Derry, Maine, which is haunted by this monster that often takes the form of the clown, because this monster feeds on fear. It will kill you using your own fear. And kids are an easy target because they are easily scared. They are a great food source for this creature. And and clowns are kind of scary. They're kind of creepy. Not everybody has this phobia, but I definitely am one of those people who has a fear of clowns. Which is funny because I had a clown for my 6th birthday, which at the time I guess I didn't realize how creepy they really were. But and I didn't watch like horror movies, so which I think that kind of makes it worse, is that there's a lot of horror movies that kind of brainwash me into being afraid of clowns. um But oh my god, this is so terrifying. I mean, the fact that this creature can take on the form of your greatest fears, so even if you're not afraid of clowns, it can, it can turn itself into whatever you are the most scared of. If it's not clowns, it will turn into that. Like, if you're scared of dogs or spiders, or if you're scared of, wolves, if you believe in werewolves, if you're scared of, um, it can, if you're, you have an abusive parent, it will take on the form of that parent. It's so the fact alone that it takes on whatever you are most scared of. That is a big fact. The scariest part about this is that no matter what, it will scare you because it will just take on whatever that form. And there's nowhere safe. You can't trust anyone, and you don't know if it has taken on the form of that person, and there's an implication that the whole town has been infected by this monster. Like, there's, this whole idea of these kids won't, that these people won't bother protecting the kids from bullies. Like, one of our main characters is a girl, and she gets harassed by the main bully of the story, and like the neighbor doesn't even bother to help her because they're scared, because they like you don't know who's an agent of this creature. And it also really explores that the things back in the past, like the sexism and bigotry and racism and all that stuff, and it makes it 10 times worse. So if you don't like reading about that stuff, this might make you a little uncomfortable, and you might not want to read this. I mean, there are things, I know that a lot of stuff that Stephen King writes, not everybody loves. He's a polarizing author for a lot of people, because he does include stuff in his works that people do not feel comfortable with, don't approve of, and just don't like. And I respect that. I still like it, and still like Stephen King, but so yeah, it really like, and he not just feeds on the fear, but he feeds on the hate, which hate comes from fear, like your fear of not knowing, not understanding this person or this thing. Then you become angry and hate it and fear at the same time, and that's when it feeds off of. So, and just and then both that remake, the 1990 adaptation, and then the reboot, the remake 2-parter really does a good job at emphasizing all the creepy things. Although, because the 2-part movie, chapter 1 and 2 really amps up the gore and the creep, like, wow, the 1990 movie, because it was on cable, and it was something, and a TV movie, so it couldn't go too far with the creepy, which, I mean, for what it did, it was very good. Like, I can see why people sometimes lean towards that one more and prefer that, because I think they could only do so much, so they really worked with that and really did a good job at building up with what they could do, even if they were limited to what they could include. But I still kind of like the remake a little bit more. But yeah, it's So, like I said, the fact that you can take on whatever you're scared of makes it really creepy. And, if you're easily scared with horror, then it's probably not the best book to read. Because I, the movie scares me more. The movie adaptations scare me more than the book, in all honesty. The book doesn't bother me as much. I mean, maybe if I think too much about it while I'm sleeping, then yeah, I might get a little creeped out. Okay, so let me go ahead and talk about the other Stephen King. And that is Bag of Bones. I just finally finished it. I started it last October, when we went on our trip to Lake Lore. Because, I was thinking cabin and everything, but it's probably more of a summer read because it does take place during the summertime. And once again, one of the things that I love about Stephen King is he does more than just scare you. He really explores a lot of ideas. Like, it kind of explored friendship and the bonds of that, and innocence, and losing your innocence, and the safety of your friends, and, all that. While this one explores grief and losing a loved one. So our main character, Mike Noonan is a writer. And he's moderately successful. And then one day at some point his wife had died. And it's been a few years, and he's still trying to get over that and move on with his life. But he can't write. He hasn't been able to write in a long time because of his grief. And he finally opts to go visit the old lake house cabin that they owned, called Sarah Laughs. And visit there, but it's a bit of he's still struggling. And while he's there, he meets this woman, this young 20-something woman, and her little girl, and it turns out that her father-in-law, who is a big computer tycoon, didn't even want her with his son. And then he meets the daughter and decides he wants to take the daughter, because he thinks this young woman is an unfit mother. So it explores quite a lot. It's one of his shorter works, short at least compared to It or The Stand, but it explores a lot about not just grief, because even the woman, I can't remember her name, is grieving her loss, but also explores, the like mothers and daughters, and father-in-laws, and the relationship between trying to join this new family, and how sometimes not the parents of your spouse aren't always too keen on you. Not necessarily, it's hard to really it's one of I think it's a biggest fear when you get married, the parents of the person you're marrying, the fear of them liking you or not liking you. And I do know someone who has experienced that, where the mom of her husband did not like her. In fact, it's funny that it did change over the years. All right, I gotta go. But anyway, so, this is first. So the book also deals with a little bit of a ghost story. Like, Sarah Laughs, turns out it might be haunted, and it's very creepy. It's like I said, it's a little creepy. The whole ghost story, and then it deals with racism. It's another one of his books that deals with racism in the past, and so these characters are grieving, but there's also the house might be haunted, and there's a custody battle plot. And you don't know what the father-in-law is going to do, because he's very controlling, and it's his way or the highway. So I think that also adds to the creepiness of the idea of this man being unpredictable and dangerous. And our main character, Mike's life is in danger because he's helping this woman and her child and protect them. So that is Bag of Bones by Stephen King. Now we're on to different. So now we have another book that's creepy in a different way. And that is Miss March by Virginia Fito. So this one is creepy in a more psychological way. You have this woman who is, her husband is a famous author, and she takes pride in that, and it's more about that she's married to him and everything, and she loves her life, and, this wonderful, perfect life with her child, where she has status, and she doesn't even read her husband's books anymore. But she finds out from someone in one of the stores she visits that her husband's latest novel, the main character, is based on her, or might be based on her. And she does not like this. She's not comfortable with this because this main character is not a likable person. They're not very nice. And so she doesn't understand why her husband's writing about a horrible character, based on her. And it makes her very insecure. So it's kind of really get inside of her head, and it more deals with the fact that this woman is kind of slowly losing her mind, and as she becomes more obsessed with the fact that her husband wrote an unlikable character based on her. And that makes her upset, and she becomes very obsessive and territorial. And to me, that's what's creepy about it, is because this woman is so unstable and not in her right mind, and you don't know what she's going to do, especially if she ever confronts her husband about this. You don't know if she is and when she will. And you just keep getting nervous because you're worried something's going to happen. Or that maybe their child is in danger. So it's creepy in a different way. Like I said, there's no monsters, there's no ghost. It's just creepy in the fact that these unstable characters, particularly the main character. And I felt really bad for her child. I wanted to get him away from this. So yeah, so this is more creepy in a different way. Like if you like more literary creepiness, then when it's more psychological and more like realistic, where like a crazy person, someone that might be unstable, then so that was number 6. So the last book I'm going to talk about is more of kind of does have, again, another monster kind of book. But it also is very philosophical. And that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So with this one, this is more creepy. This is about the scientist who decides to create life from dead bodies. But then when he does, this Victor Frankenstein creates this life, he regrets it and is disgusted by his creation. So he abandons his creation, but his creation has a mind of its own, and actually, like I said, it's alive, and it thinks and feels, and starts to stalk him and try to find him. And it's more of a who is the real monster here, because the creature on the surface seems like the monster, because it doesn't understand you can't kill people, and also it's stalking Victor. But then you realize that this guy was messing with life and death, and did this and created this creation, but is not taking responsibility for it. And the creature tries to negotiate and is like, I'll leave you alone if you give me a mate, a partner. And you can't blame the creature, because the creature didn't have anybody. There was no one else like him. So he was alone, and his creator just didn't want anything to do with him. So it's kind of creepy in the fact, first you have the monster, this creature, and and this guy is messing with life and death. But then you also have like this, you know, that this creature will do anything will do anything to get what it wants. And you just, like I said, what's creepy is you don't know who's the true monster here. But so yes, this is really good. I definitely recommend it for a classic. I wanted to read it. Thinking about reading it for October, but we will see because, you know, like I said, I can't bring this with me. I don't know. Because they'll only be able to read it at my house. So, and also, again, atmosphere. This is a really great atmosphere, a really creepy atmosphere, and it's really good. There's a lot of creepy artwork in this one, in this adaptation. I mean, this edition of the book. So that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. So those are my top seven creepy, spooky reads. I would love to know what yours are. Have you read any of the books I recommend I have here? What do you think? So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Click subscribe if you haven't already. Click the bell notification below if you want to be notified about my latest videos. And I hope your reading life is going well and you're reading some great books. And I will talk to you all later. Bye.